Greetings to all of you, my dear sisters and brothers and my dear friends, and warm welcome to all of you from your Pastor Yeti. My dear ones, tomorrow I fly back to California. My 2 weeks of mission work is over, and not over in friendship and companionship with my dear friends here. So tomorrow I don't have the time, and also on Sunday. So remember that the broadcasting doesn't stop. So I give you enough food to go along in the time you have. Okay, so today we have to do 2 parts of the burden and profit, which I will fulfill, that you will see that it will be posted on my broadcasting episode. So the burden and profit, and we are now in the chapters of 13 to 23. Whether you like it or not, history is on our side. We will bury you. The premier of the Soviet Union, Nikita Khrushchev, made that statement to a group of Western diplomats on November 18, 1956. But Khrushchev is dead, and the Soviet Union no longer exists. Khrushchev's boastful prophecy was not fulfilled. Is there a pattern to history? Is anyone in charge? The British historian Edward Gibbon called history little more than the register of crimes, follies, and misfortunes of mankind. But the American missionary leader Arthur T. Pierson said that history is his, the Lord, God, story. Which one is right? The prophet Isaiah would stand with Pierson. For these 11 chapters are certainly evidence that God is at work in the nations of the world. In these chapters, the prophet revealed God's plan not only for Judah, but also for 10 Gentile nations. President James Garfield called history the unrolled scroll of prophecy, and Isaiah unrolled the scroll for us to read. World leaders need to learn the lesson that Nebuchadnezzar learned the hard way, that the Most High rules in the kingdom of man and give it to whomever he chooses. Daniel 4:25. Paul made the same declaration to the Greek philosophers in Athens. God determined the time set for the nations and the exact places where they should live. Acts 17:26. Indeed, history is his, God's story. Isaiah called this prophetic declaration burdens. The Hebrew word means to lift up. The prophet was carrying a heavy weight because of the solemn nature of his message. He was announcing judgments that involved the destruction of cities and the slaughter of thousands of people. No wonder he felt burdened. Babylon 13 verse 1 to 4, and then chapter 14:23, and then we move on. The word Babel means gateway to a god, and sounds like the Hebrew word Bala, which means confusion. In scriptures, Babylon symbolizes the world systems man has built in defiance of God. Jerusalem and Babylon are contrasting cities. One is the chosen city of God, the other the wicked city of man. The city of God will last forever, but the rebellious city of man will ultimately be destroyed. God musters his army God is sovereign. You see that in chapter 13. He is able to call any army his desire, to accomplish any task he assigns. He can summon them with a whistle, or by using leaders to raise a banner, shout and beckon to the soldiers. In this case, God is mustering the army of the Medes, and he calls them my sanctified ones. Even though they did not believe in Jehovah God, the Medes were set apart by God to do his holy work. Now God punishes his enemies. Chapter 13. The city of Babylon was completely destroyed in 689 BC by Sennacherib and the Assyrian army, but it was rebuilt by Sennacherib's son in 539 BC, and Darius the Mede captured the city, but he did not destroy it. In the centuries that followed, Babylon had its shining moments. But after the death of its last great conqueror, Alexander the Great, the city declined and soon was no more. Isaiah's prophecy was fulfilled, for the city was not rebuilt. But it is clear that Isaiah's prophecy describes something more significant than the ups and downs of an ancient city. The prophets often began a message by focusing on local events, but then enlarged their vision to reveal something greater. Isaiah saw in the fall of Babylon a picture of the day of the Lord, that time when God will pour out his wrath on the whole world. The image of the woman in travail is used in scriptures to describe a time of judgment, where sorrows is birth pains, and 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 3. Isaiah looked beyond that day to the day when the Babylonian world system would be destroyed, Revelation 17 and 18, and compare Isaiah 13 verse 10 and Matthew 24:29, Joel 2 verse 10 and Revelation 6 12 to 14, and see Jeremiah 50 to 51 chapters. God delivers his people. Isaiah warned that the kingdom of Judah would be taken into captivity by Babylon, where Shinar is Babylon, and this happened in 586 BC. Jeremiah prophesied that the captivity would last for 70 years, and then Babylon would judge, and the Jews permitted to go home. So the capture of Babylon by Darius would be good news to the Jews, for it would mean the end of their exile and bondage. The picture in in Isaiah is that of a mighty monarch whose pride has brought him to destruction. And this is what happened to Belshazzar when Darius the Mede captured Babylon in 539 BC. Daniel 5. Isaiah describes the king's arrival in Sheol, the world of the dead, where the king's wealth, glory, and power vanished. The dead kings already in Sheol stood in tribute to him, but it was all a mockery. The prophet saw in this event something far deeper than the defeat of an empire and the fall of the king of Babylon. We saw the defeat of Satan, the prince of this world, who seeks to energize and motivate the leaders of nations. Daniel 10 verse 20 indicates that Satan has assigned princes, fallen angels, to the various nations, so that he can influence leaders to act contrary to the will of God. This highest of God's angels tried to usurp the throne of God and capture for himself the worship that belongs along to God. The name Lucifer, morning star, indicates that Satan tries to imitate Jesus Christ, who is the bride and morning star. I will be like the Most High reveals his basic strategy, for he is an imitator. Like the king of Babylon, Satan will one day be humiliated and defeated. He will be cast out of heaven and finally cast into hell, whether God is dealing with kings or angels. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. God announces the victory. The desert of the sea is probably the area around the Persian Gulf. Isaiah uses the image of a desert storm as he describes the attack of the Assyrians against Babylon, which took place in 689 BC. And all that time, Babylon and Assyria were rival powers, although Assyria was stronger, and the nations in the Fertile Crescent hoped that Babylon would stop the advance of Assyria. Alas, Babylon fell to Assyria, opened the way for Assyria to sweep across the region in conquest. Realizing the consequences of Babylon's fall, the prophet experienced pain like a woman in travail, and felt crushed like grain in a mile. At this announcement, referred to the fall of Babylon in 539 BC, the Jews would have rejoiced, for it would have meant release from captivity. But in 689 BC, Babylon's defeat meant the destruction of the northern kingdom and the devastation of the southern kingdom. And note that Jeremiah 51:8, and John, Revelation 14, both adopted Isaiah's words. Babylon is fallen, is fallen. Assyria. The key word here is purpose. God is in control of the rise and the fall of the nations as he works out his divine purposes in the world. Assyria was his tool to accomplish his purposes, and the day would come when God will judge Assyria. The judgment will take place in the land of Judah, and God will be the judge. Assyria invaded Judah during Hezekiah's reign, 701 BC, and God destroyed the army as it threatened to capture Jerusalem. God permitted Assyria to discipline Judah, but he would not allow the enemy to destroy his people. Philistia. An Assyrian leader died, and the Philistines rejoiced that their enemy had been weakened. But Isaiah warned them that their rejoicing was presumptuous, for the new king would be worse. Isaiah compared the dead Assyrian ruler to a snake that gave birth to an even worse serpent. Weep, Philistine cities, you are doomed. Moab. The Moabites were the product of Lot's incestuous union with his daughter, and were the avowed enemies of the Jews. The plight of Moab. Within 3 years, this prophecy against Moab would be fulfilled with great nation's lamentation. At least 14 different references to lamentation occur in this chapter: weeping, wailing, boldness, sackcloth, crying out, and etc. The people fled to their temples and prayed to their gods. but to no avail. Even a day of national humiliation did not stop Assyrians from invading Moab and ravaging the land. Advancing armies often stopped up the springs and watercourses and left the land in desolation. Where there was water in Moab, it was stained with blood, so great was the carnage. How could the weak Moabites ever hope to defeat the great Assyrian lion? And my dear ones, I will stop here and move on to part 2 in another episode that I will start in a few minutes. Well, of course, in my minutes. So blessings to all of you, my dear ones. This is your Pastor Yeti. Bye.